Hi, my name is Tom, and I'll be explaining uh, Fixing Bob, which is a game that I created. So, Fixing Bob is a gear game, a puzzle game where you play as Tim, who had to fix his robot called Bob. So, let's get started. So, your objective of the game is to fix Bob. So, how you do that is by making sure that you rotate these two red gears using the green gear. So, you could buy gears to connect the red gears. See, once you connect one red gear, it will tell you that, hey, you managed to activate the gear. So you could do that for the other gear, but before that, I want to show you that some features that can tell the player. For instance, the money tells you how much money the player have. So as you can see here, the gear costs money. So whenever I buy a gear, you see it subtracts from the total amount. So after you spend all your money, okay, that wasn't supposed to happen, but anyways, once you spend all your money and you try to buy money, you can hear the error saying that you can't buy any more money. So what I can do now is just reset the entire game. Another feature is that you could delete gears. So let me just really quickly put in a bunch of gears, and then you could just delete them. Simple. And it will also tell you using the tooltip that you are on the delete mode. But anyways, let me just quickly do this. Once you completed the game, then it will tell you that you have managed to complete the first level. So there's a total of 4 levels that you could play from. So each one, there are mostly different variation of the game. In level 2, I introduced a new game object called the join, which can connect 2 different gears at different layers. As you can see here, this is layer 1. And if you connect it, it will show a joint that's popping out in the layer 2, and you could connect gears using that joint, and it can rotate. So this is especially useful for crossing from one area to another when it's blocking. In level 3, I introduced something called a one directional gear, which only force the gear which only moves one direction. If the other gears try to force it to go to the opposite direction, which is not supposed to go, then it will jam all the gears, resulting in all the gears can't even move at all. Lastly, for level 4, I increased the difficulty by first adding an obstacle gear. So this obstacle gear will be found in like one of the layers, and once they before it's activated, like before it's rotated, it will be shown like this, where there will be an obstacle that's blocking the players from entering a certain area, which in this case, this area. But once you rotate the obstacle gear, then it will open up. So in this picture, you see that there's no more obstacle anymore because of the obstacle gear being rotated. Lastly, I combined the one directional gear together with an inactivated gear, so make the game more difficult. Next, I'll go through all the scripts in my game. So, I'll first start off with the color data. So this is basically how all the gears and the joints get their color from. So this is just a script to contain all the colors. And then so it gets color from the color scriptable object, and then assign it to the variables here. So the color scriptable object is just to contain the colors. So I could create a new instance of a scriptable object to contain it. So you could see it used in the level manager over here. Next is the data the two datas. So layer data and sound data, they are both not used in Unity, but really helpful for developing things. So it's like I saw different variables with different layer masks and put it as static so that I could call it whenever I want. And the same thing goes for sound data, where I contain all the magic strings of the different sound clips to be played. Next is the game data scriptable object, which is to contain the data of the game, such as the money, what types of buttons there are, what types of level there is. So that's mainly what the scriptable object contains. You could see in the game data. So all these are the data for each level, as you can see here. Next, I'll go through the manager scripts. So there's a few manager scripts I have, like the gear remainder checker. This one is to check if all the inactivated gears in the level has been activated, which is basically being rotated and meet a certain speed condition. The layer manager is the manager that does the shifting of the camera and the background to simulate the level being shifting into different layers. So you could see over here where you use the background and the camera. Next is the level manager. This one is special. This one is to create all the buttons and the layer buttons over here, and also contains events to call out whenever the game ended. The money manager is the manager here that does the spending of money and the refunding of money, so it does all money related purposes. Finally, I have the music manager. This is only used for playing music. Next, I'll go through the mouse managers. So the mouse so it follows a finite state machine where this is played. There will be a mouse manager here that will keep track of the mouse behavior. So there's different states for the mouse, such as the mouse idle, which only works when the mouse is idling around. Mouse move selected object is basically to drag the objects that the mouse purchased here, and it will shift to the mouse selected object, so it could drag around the gear. Finally, the delete item is for the gear to delete different things. So once they click this, they'll enter the delete state and it will start deleting all the gears and the joints. Next is the more important stuff, which are the gears and the interfaces for everything pertaining to moving the gears. So I start off with the most important one, which is the rotatable element. This is the script that tells the different child classes how to rotate. So it gives the class a list of functions that they have to fulfill in order for them to know that they can rotate. So for instance, the gear class, which many of the gears in the game inherits from, follows these sets of rules in order to rotate the different gears in the game. And the same goes for the other gears, like the One Direction gear, but they have a bit of different variation of the functions and stuff. So One Directional gear is for the One Directional gear. The obstacle gear here is for the obstacle gear. So basically they all have some sort of changes to the gear, but they all follow the same rules to rotate. The draggable gear is similar, but it implements the iMovable interface. So the iMovable interface is to allow the different gears to get dragged along and move about with the mouse. So that's all it does. So the iMovable will have a list of functions for the different class to fulfill, so that they can move around. The rest of the gears here will have different implementations, like I said. There's a few exceptions, such as the obstacle behavior. The obstacle behavior works well with the obstacle gear, so it does the moving of the obstacle. So whenever the obstacle gear is activated, it will move away, and if the obstacle gear is not activated, then it will move back, like I said earlier. Next, I will talk about the end gear class and the starting gear class. These two class specifies which kind of gear is a starting gear and which one is an end gear. So it works based on composition. So what it does is just to get reference of the gear and then make them the starting gear. So it's very easy for me to select which one is the starting gear and which one is the end gear. Now next, I have the joint behavior. This is also a rotatable element. So all the joints are made is iMovable, so they can also drag their joints. So this is a special kind of script that allows two different gears to interact between each other from different layers. Next is the UI. So some of the UI scripts here, they are basically to define the buttons, because sometimes Unity button doesn't really work as what I expected, so I have to create my own script to showcase the behavior I want. So the custom button is to change the color, but the custom scriptable object is similar to a custom button, but to change the sprite of the button. Next is the delete button. So the delete button is the button here. So what it does is that it's going to tell the mouse manager to allow the mouse to delete or not to delete. The item button is the button here that contains a prefab of the gear or the joint, so that the player can purchase this gear and joint and drag it along. So this is also a very important script here. Layer button is the buttons here that does the controlling of the layers. So it's going to tell the layer manager here that, hey, the player is supposed to be in this layer, and it's going to show the current layer of the player, so it gives a feedback to the players. Next is the level button. This is only found in the level manager. So whenever the player wants to shift between two different levels, then it's going to that's what the level button do lah. So you could click the different levels, and it's going to restrict the players if they haven't completed a level. So that's what it does. The mute background music is the pause menu. As you can see here, this mute background music. So it's going to tell the music manager to toggle a boolean that toggles between whether it can play background music and if it cannot play a background music. Same goes for the SVX music button. The restart button is a special button. It's going to be here that does all the resetting. It doesn't reset the scene, but it's going to collect all the gears and refund and restart the player's amount of money they have. Lastly is the scene button. This isn't really used because it's more legacy, but it basically helps you shift between two different layers. Scenes. Next, I'll be talking about the all these behaviors other than buttons. So the end panel behavior is the panel here. So what it does is going to listen for the finish game event, and it's going to slide in telling the player that he or she have completed the level. The menu behavior is these two buttons here. So what it does is that it's going to call the animation to play whenever it wants to go in and out. So it's used for the gear menu and the layer panel here. So it's going to pop, slide in, slide out. So that's what the menu behavior does. The money add behavior is the one here. So it's a very minor script. So whenever the events finish, it's going to call this function out to clear the text. Next is the pause menu. The pause menu is the menu here. So what it does is going to listen for the escape button click, and it's going to show this pause menu. Next is the scene transition manager. So the scene transition manager is this big circle here. So what it does is going to play an animation to slide in and slide out when the scene is being called, when the game calls for another scene. The tooltip behavior is the tooltip here. So it's going to call so different scripts can call out this class, and it's going to show useful information for the players. The tutorial behavior is the behavior here. It's going to store different types of tutorials, text and images for the players to know, so that they could better understand how the game works. Next is the volume changer. It's the two sliders here. So what it does is going to tell the music manager to change the float of the background music and the SVX music, so that it can lower the volume down. Lastly is the circle calculator. This is a very minor script to give the distance to separate two different circles. So this is very useful for the gears to separate them out. This is a bit minor, but this is to sense cheat code. It's only in the starting menu when you press your Ctrl R to reset the level or increment the level with the I. That's what the debugger do.